Around 100,000 years ago, someone drilled a tiny hole through a sea snail shell, threaded it onto a cord, and wore it. We found those shells, and they might be one of the most important discoveries in the entire history of our species, not because of what they are, a shell with a hole in it is a small thing, but because of what they prove, that somebody that long ago had quietly crossed a line no creature had ever crossed before. A line into a mind that works like yours. Because here is a question that sounds almost silly, and turns out to be one of the most profound you can ask about human beings. Why do we wear jewelry? Think about it honestly. A necklace does nothing. A bracelet does nothing. A ring keeps you neither warm, nor fed, nor safe. In the brutal calculus of survival, decoration is a pure waste of time and energy and skill poured into an object that does not help you live for one single second. And yet humans have been doing it everywhere for an astonishingly long time. That is genuinely strange, and the strangeness is the doorway to something huge. Here is the thing nobody tells you about jewelry. Those first beads are not really about beauty or vanity or fashion. They are the oldest hard evidence we have, sitting right there in the ground, of a human mind that had learned to do something no mind had ever done before. To make one thing stand for another, to think in symbols. And that single ability, the thing that a little drilled shell quietly proves, may be the exact thing that separates us from every other animal that has ever lived. By the end of this video, I want you to see a piece of jewelry not as an accessory, but as what it truly is. A fossil of the moment we became us. So let's start with that uselessness, because it is the key to the whole mystery, and most people rush right past it. A stone tool. We understand. It cuts, it scrapes, it kills, it keeps you alive. Clothing, we understand. It holds off the cold, it lets you survive in places your bare skin couldn't. These things have obvious, physical survival payoffs. You can see exactly why evolution would favor a creature that made them but a bead, a shell on a string. It does nothing physical at all. It doesn't improve your body's odds of surviving the next winter by one particle. So from a cold evolutionary standpoint, making jewelry looks like pure madness, wasted hours, wasted effort, squandered energy in a world where every calorie counted. And that precisely is why it matters so much. Because if an object has no physical use, then the only possible reason to make it and wear it is that it means something. Its entire value is in what it represents. A bead doesn't do anything. A bead says something. And to make an object whose only purpose is to carry meaning, you need a mind capable of meaning. A mind that can look at a shell and see, not food, not a tool, but an idea. That leap from the physical to the symbolic is one of the most important leaps in the history of life on this planet, and jewelry is the first place we can actually see it happen. And I want you to sit with just how much effort our ancestors were willing to pour into this useless thing, because the effort is the proof of how much it mattered. Making a bead by hand with Stone Age technology is not quick. You have to find the right shell or stone or piece of bone. You have to pierce it, which with primitive tools is slow, delicate, frustrating work, where one wrong move shatters the whole thing and you start again. Then you have to string it, often with dozens or hundreds of others, to make anything worth wearing. Experimental archaeologists who have tried to recreate ancient beadwork have found it takes hours upon hours of patient, skilled labor. Now picture doing all of that in a world where every hour was precious, where that same time could have been spent hunting, gathering, or resting your exhausted body. Or ancestors chose again and again to spend those precious hours making something that would never feed or warm or protect them. You do not make that choice for something trivial. The sheer cost of it screams that this mattered to them enormously. And the only thing a useless object can matter for is what it means. So let's go to the evidence, because it is genuinely breathtaking once you understand what you're looking at. The star of this story is a place called Blombos Cave on the southern coast of South Africa. It is one of the most important archaeological sites on Earth for understanding the birth of the modern mind. And in the layers of Blombos, dating back around 75,000 years, archaeologists found them. Tiny shells from a small sea snail, each one deliberately pierced with a hole. Under the microscope, you can see wear marks, the little polished spots where they rubbed against each other and against a cord, exactly as you'd expect from beads that were strung together and worn. These aren't random shells, these are manufactured objects. Someone selected them, pierced them, strung them, and wore them 75,000 years ago. And Blombos has even more to tell us, because in the same site, researchers found pieces of ochre, that red iron-rich pigment deliberately engraved with careful, abstract, cross-hatched patterns. Patterns that mean nothing practical, but were carved on purpose, with intention, tens of thousands of years ago. Put the engraved ochre and the shell beads together and you are looking at the unmistakable signature of a symbolic mind, a mind that decorates, that patterns, that makes meaning for its own sake. Blombos is like a window, and through it we can see the modern human mind switching on, but it goes back even further. At sites like Skhul and Qafzeh, over in the region of modern Israel, and at sites in North Africa, archaeologists have found similar pierced shell beads that may be around 10000 years old, or even older. And here is a detail that stops you cold when you really think about it. In some cases, these shells came from species that live in the sea, but were found far inland miles and miles from the coast, which means somebody carried them, deliberately. Over long distances, they valued these little shells enough to transport them across the landscape for no practical reason at all, except that the shells mattered to them, that they meant something worth carrying. Think about what that tells you. This wasn't a casual, accidental thing. People were seeking out specific shells, sometimes from far away, working them into beads and wearing them across vast stretches of the ancient world for tens of thousands of years. This behavior was widespread, and it was old, and it was clearly important to the people who did it. A useless object treated as precious by humans separated by huge distances and enormous spans of time. That is not an accident. That is a fundamental feature of the human mind revealing itself. And here is a detail that makes it even more striking. When you find the same behavior appearing in far-flung places, you have to ask whether it spread from one source or arose independently, and either answer is astonishing. If these bead-making traditions spread, then people were carrying not just shells but ideas across the landscape, teaching each other, sharing a practice, which is itself a profoundly human cultural act. And if they arose independently, in separate populations who never met, then symbolic ornament isn't a lucky one-off invention at all. It is something the human mind reaches for on its own. Wherever it finds itself, like water finding the same level, both possibilities point to the same deep truth. The urge to wear meaning is not a local fashion that happened once. It is baked into what our species is. Give a modern human mind a handful of shells and some time, and sooner or later, somewhere it starts making beads. It cannot seem to help itself. That compulsion to take the raw material of the world and turn it into worn meaning is one of the most reliable signatures of a mind like ours that exists. So now, let me throw something at you that might sound wild, but is the real heart of this entire story. What that little drilled bead actually proves is that its maker could think in symbols. And thinking in symbols may be the single most important thing your species has ever learned to do. Let me explain what I mean by a symbol. Because it is so basic we forget how miraculous it is. A symbol is a thing that stands for another thing. The bead is not the meaning. The bead points to a meaning that exists somewhere else, in the mind. A shell necklace might have said, "This person is married," or "This person belongs to our group." Or "This person is a great hunter," or "This person has power." The physical object and the invisible meaning are two completely separate things, held together only by a shared idea inside human heads. And the ability to do that, to let one thing stand for another, is the exact same ability that sits underneath the most powerful tool our species ever developed. Language, because what is a word? A word is a sound that stands for a thing. The sound tree is not a tree. It is a noise your mouth makes that points to the idea of a tree held in the mind. That is symbolic thinking, the very same leap as the bead. When our ancestors started making symbolic objects, wearing meaning on their bodies, they were flexing the exact mental muscle that language runs on. Many researchers see the arrival of symbolic objects like these beads as part of the same great cognitive awakening that gave us complex language, art, religion, and everything that followed. The bead and the word are cousins. Both are a physical thing standing in for an invisible idea. Which means that when you look at a 7500-year-old bead, you may be looking at one of the earliest physical proofs that a human mind could do the thing that makes all of human culture possible. Hold a symbol. Wearing jewelry wasn't the opposite of deep thought. It was deep thought made visible, hung around a neck. And here is why archaeologists get so excited about this in a way that might not be obvious. Language leaves no fossils. Neither does religion or a myth or a belief or a thought. All the invisible furniture of the modern mind, the stuff that actually makes us human, is exactly the stuff that rots away and leaves nothing behind. So how do you ever prove when our ancestors started thinking like us? You look for the shadow that symbolic thought casts on physical objects, and a bead is that shadow. A deliberately made symbol you can hold in your hand is durable, undeniable proof that a symbolic mind existed at that moment, even though the thoughts themselves are long gone. That is why these little shells matter so far beyond their size. They are one of the only ways we can reach back and touch the birth of the human mind itself. When someone drilled that hole, they left a fingerprint of their consciousness in the archaeological record, a signal across 100,000 years that says plainly, someone was in here thinking the way you think. The bead is the closest thing we have to a fossilized thought. So if jewelry is a symbol, the next question is obvious. What was it saying? Because a symbol only works if it is carrying a message. And it turns out that little bead could carry a whole range of them. The first, and maybe the deepest, is identity and belonging. Imagine your group all wears a particular kind of shell in a particular way. Now, at a glance, from a distance, you can tell your people from strangers. The jewelry becomes a badge, a flag, a wearable statement of who I am and who I belong to. In a world of scattered bands where meeting strangers could mean anything, a visible symbol of your tribe was powerful. It knitted a group together and marked its edges. Your necklace announced your people before you said a word. Then there is status. Some jewelry was clearly harder to make, or made of rarer materials, or required more skill and time. And a person wearing something difficult and precious is sending an unmistakable signal about their place in the world, their importance, their achievements, their power. We do this to this very day, and we know exactly what it means when we see it. That instinct is at least tens of thousands of years old. The person with the most striking ornament was making a statement the whole group could read instantly. Jewelry also spoke in the language of attraction, one message among many. A beautiful, skillfully made ornament advertised something about its wearer, their skill, their resources, their eye for beauty, their fitness as a partner. It was one more channel in the endless human conversation about who is worth pairing with, and there was very likely a spiritual dimension too. Across countless cultures, ornaments have served as amulets and charms, objects believed to carry protective power, to ward off harm, to connect the wearer to the spirit world. That first bead might have been a shield against unseen dangers as much as a decoration. Identity, status, attraction, protection. Look at that list and notice something. Every single one of those is about meaning, about communication, about one human mind signaling something invisible to another human mind through a physical object. Jewelry was one of humanity's first communication technologies, a way to broadcast who you were before you'd opened your mouth. And that is why it appeared so early and mattered so much. It wasn't decoration bolted onto human life. It was woven into the very thing that makes us human or endless, restless need to mean things, and to share those meanings with each other. Now we have to talk about the shadow side of this. Because the same beautiful invention has a harder edge, here is the uncomfortable part. A symbol that can say we belong together can just as easily say you don't belong here. The very same bead that unites a group also draws a line around it, and everyone on the outside of that line is now visibly an outsider. The wearable badge of identity is also a wearable badge of division. Use in them made visible worn on the body. And once jewelry started marking status, it started marking hierarchy, who was above, who was below, who had power, and who didn't, all displayed openly for everyone to see and to feel. The ornament that lifted one person up necessarily marked others as lower. So woven right into this gorgeous, profound human invention, this proof of our symbolic genius is also the seed of some of our oldest divisions, the marking of the insider and the outsider, the display of the high and the low. That is not a reason to think less of those first beads. It is just a reminder that almost every powerful thing humans ever invented cut in more than one direction. The same mind that could wear a meaning could also wear a wall. So why did ancient humans start wearing jewelry? And here is the honest answer, the one this channel always owes you. We can't point to the first bead or the first person who wore one, and we never will. Those Blombos shells, those 100,000-year-old beads, sophisticated as they are, deliberately made and carried and worn, are clearly not the beginning. They're already a refined, established practice. Whoever made them was standing on top of a long history of simpler symbolic acts that left no trace, feathers worn and rotted away, flowers tucked into hair, patterns painted on skin in pigments that washed off, meanings made and lost with no shell to survive them. The true first ornament is gone forever. What survives is a late, hard chapter of a story whose opening pages have dissolved. But we can say what it means, and what it means is extraordinary. Humans started wearing jewelry because, at some point, our minds crossed a threshold. We became creatures who could hold a symbol, who could make one thing stand for another, who needed to wear our meanings on our bodies and read the meanings worn by others. Jewelry appeared at the dawn of the symbolic mind hand in hand with art and pattern, and very likely language itself. It wasn't a trivial luxury that came along once survival was handled. It was one of the very first things we did once we became fully symbolically human. It may be one of the truest signatures of the modern mind that exists. because that is the part I want to leave you with. The next time you see someone wearing a ring, a necklace, a treasured little object that serves no practical purpose whatsoever, I want you to see it for what it actually is. You are looking at one of the oldest and most human behaviors there is, a behavior that reaches back 100,000 years and more, to a person in a cave by the sea patiently drilling a hole through a shell, because that shell meant something, and they needed to wear that meaning where the world could see it. That impulse to carry meaning on the body, to say something about who we are without a single word, is not vanity. It is one of the first sparks of the symbolic fire that lit up the entire human story. Every piece of jewelry ever worn is a direct descendant of that first drilled shell. And so, in a way, is every word you've ever spoken. They didn't wear jewelry because they were shallow. They wore it because they had just become deep, because they had crossed into a new kind of mind, one that could hold a meaning and needed to share it, and a bead was the first place they could hang it where everyone could see. That is the opposite of shallow. That is the deepest thing a mind had ever done. So here is my question for you. Do you wear anything right now that means something to you, that carries a story or a person or a memory more than any actual use? I genuinely love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments. Until then, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.